Awesome. We have Christina Guilbeau with us today. She is part of a wonderful nonprofit organization that she's created called Hopebound, and their focus is making sure that they can deliver resources for those that need help around mental health and wellness, specifically with youth. So thank you, Christina, for making the time and being with us and sharing some knowledge and insight into this very relevant and important topic of mental health.
Thanks, Daniel. I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm really excited to talk about this with you.
So am I. So if we just get right into it, can you go into the background a little bit of your own personal history with how mental health was, it became an important thing for you in your life?
Yeah, definitely. And before I go into mental health specifically, I just want to talk about specifically my passion for working with youth. So, since I was a very young age, I was really passionate about working with kids younger than myself, either by volunteering or tutoring or mentoring. And I was very focused on education throughout college. And after college, I taught sixth and seventh grade math with Teach for America in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I bring that up because I started to understand how particularly vulnerable the adolescent age group was when it comes to mental health struggles. And one statistic is that 50% of all lifetime cases of mental illness begin by the age of 14. And what's really interesting is that I myself, like many people, have struggled with mental health. So since I was about the age of 14, I've had different issues, but every single time I needed support, I was easily able to access therapy whenever I needed it. And I realized that I was extremely privileged because that access was either due to me having insurance or me being a student at a college or a graduate school where they were able to offer those resources to students. So essentially, my experience with mental health really drove my awareness of the access that I had and then the access that others didn't. And that's how Hopebound came about, really ensuring that access could be received by adolescents in particular due to the vulnerability of their age group.
Okay, thank you for bringing that up. And um, can you unpack a little bit of the circumstances that maybe the adolescents who may have mental health issues might normally experience? What does their day-to-day life look like?
Yeah, so I think, the way I think about it, and, I'm not a psychologist. I did study psychology in undergrad at Amherst College, but I think about it as essentially their behaviors have been altered in a way that it is now affecting their day-to-day life.
Mm.
That could look like they're oversleeping or not sleeping enough, or overeating or not eating enough. And essentially, sleeping and eating I bring up because those are some of the key indicators of how somebody may be coping with something that has happened in their life. So they may be suffering from a loss. There may be, just an undue amount of stress that they're experiencing due to school or due to home life, whatever it may be. But essentially, regardless of the behavior change, they are struggling with developing the healthy coping skills to really process their day-to-day lives, and they may be struggling with communication, with processing, and they could really benefit from having someone who's formally educated to be a mental health professional to be a partner in kind of processing different things that may have happened in the past and then planning ahead for the future, ultimately with the goal of ensuring that they can be more self-sufficient in really dealing with what inevitably will come up again in life as we all deal with different adversities and challenges.
How did Hopebound come to be?
Hopebound came to be during the summer in between my first and second year at business school at Stanford. And I was out in California and was speaking with one of my former students with whom I'm very close, and I've known her now for 7 years. And essentially, she had struggled with her mental health off and on, but never had access to private therapy. None of the schools she attended had mental health staff members there. And essentially, I was doing my best to act as the nearest proxy for a therapist. But what happened is that it got to the point where I became afraid that she may hurt herself, and I felt helpless. I directed her to call the National Suicide Hotline, and she did. And we thereafter had a conversation with her parent and worked to get her plugged into some kind of support, which ended up taking months, and it wasn't very effective. But that moment helped me notice two things. One, I was not trained to be acting as her sole source of mental health support. I was not qualified for that. At that point, her parent didn't really even understand what was going on. I was really the only adult who did, and I was almost 3,000 miles away. Secondly, again, the issue of access was really illuminated for me. So I thought about, okay, I'm at Stanford and I can walk into the counseling center and more or less get an appointment within a few days. But for that student of mine, it was much more of a struggle for her. So I started to think about access, and I thought, okay, I want to have people that can deploy this mental health support to adolescents in need, but I don't want it to be volunteers or well-intending people like myself, because I think it's really critical that they do have that formal education. Mm-hmm. So that's how I started to think about leveraging graduate students. So essentially what Hopebound does is we connect master's and doctoral level mental health clinicians, so those who are in clinical psychology programs, social work programs, marriage and family therapy, or counseling programs, and we connect them with adolescents in need of mental health support, particularly adolescents who qualify for free or reduced lunch. That's our target population, along with adolescents of color, LGBTQIA adolescents, those who are in the foster care system or maybe experiencing homelessness, really any adolescent group that is more vulnerable. But the one thing I should mention as well is that the original idea was always to connect them via teletherapy. So it's really interesting now with COVID-19 because that's the norm. You know, that's how you and I are communicating right now, but that's also how I see my own therapist and how other people are seeing their doctor, or just communicating with anybody. But that was always the model because I felt like it was critical to ensure that, again, the support was accessible. So if the clinician intern was at a school, 30 miles away from the adolescent who needed that support, it was going to be harder to ensure that they could see each other in person. Also, research shows that youth often prefer this kind of medium as opposed to in person. And then it's also more cost effective. So because of my target population, it just made a lot of sense to leverage teletherapy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the bridging of the gap that you're making between those that are healthcare professionals, that they are getting the education, they have the bandwidth and the means to offer help and services to really an underserved demographic of people, and being the youth. With getting therapy, getting help around mental health, what are some of the challenges, both from the adolescent side and also from the legal guardian or parent side, that you see come up?
Yeah. So I think one of the first things that comes to mind is stigma. So, amongst people of color, it's really relevant right now because I think this applies to all people of color, is I think that oftentimes there is a stigma against accessing mental health support. So that can show up for both the kids and the parents. And of course, right, for any parent, they may not want to necessarily admit that their child needs that kind of help, even if that stigma doesn't exist. Thankfully, now that conversation is being had a lot more, and people are realizing mental health is part of this broader spectrum of wellness. I know that you really focus on physical wellness, but I think that mental wellness is very interrelated.
Absolutely.
That's how that conversation is being had more. But I think in addition to stigma, another challenge can sometimes be accessibility, because the truth is that to access teletherapy, you need connection to the internet. You need a device that connects to the internet. Now that everybody is at home, you need a space at home that is private, where you can actually talk about what's going on. And oftentimes what you would like to talk about is about potentially the people that you're sharing that home with. So those are definitely issues that can come up.
Recognizing that regardless of the situation or the circumstances that we're in, taking advantage of this teletherapy medium is a great way for those that have that availability to get access to Hopebound and the network that you're a part of. But also, if they don't, then what steps could they take in getting access to Hopebound and your network of professionals?
They can always visit our website, hopebound.com, to email us. They can reach out to hello@hopebound.com. If you're looking just to, learn more about our journey or to understand what we've been up to, you can check out our Instagram account at Hopebound Mental Health. So those are all ways that you could directly contact us. And I think those are all different, mediums that people can reach out just to learn more about what's out there. What I will say is, for those who may be watching who are not in Georgia, that is currently where I'm based, we are expanding to California not too long from now. I just want to highlight the resource Crisis Text Line, and you can text home or hello or really any word to 741-741, and a volunteer will be there to talk with you. So that is something that I'd like to highlight, just for to act as kind of a bridge. And you can text that number, as often as you want to, and that can act as a bridge before you might get connected to one-on-one therapy.
Excellent. Thank you for bringing that up. And I'll make sure that it's in the show notes for anybody watching. If this is a resource that you want to take advantage of, to share it with others, I'll make sure that that's readily available. So Christina, in the next 2 months, let's say leading into towards the end of 2020, what are some efforts that Hopebound is making in hopes of making strides in mental health?
Yeah, definitely. So in the next 2 months, the 2020 to 2021 school year will be starting, and Hopebound is relatively young, less than a year old, but right now we've been reaching kids through individual referrals. So through me as being a former teacher, teachers I know, parents I know, and just really leveraging word of mouth and spreading in that way. But the ultimate goal is to create partnerships with school districts or individual public middle or high schools, as well as after school programs. And that's where we're looking to now really start to scale and have that access to kids and meet them where they are, which is at school. We will see in the fall, they may not physically be at school, but we would like to really leverage that connection, because like myself being a former teacher, teachers have the awareness of which kids may be experiencing some of those struggles that I was talking about earlier. So that's what we're looking ahead to do. Also, ultimately looking to grow the team. I'm currently the only full-time employee, but I work with 5 mental health clinician interns, so always looking to increase that number to serve more kids. But hopefully we'll be in the thousands not too long from now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we spoke on this earlier, but moving out of this COVID-19 situation and the things that have been occurring this year in just the last 10 to 12 weeks, there absolutely will be this exponential growth of people that will be needing this kind of service. So anybody that's watching this, please reach out to Hopebound. Again, the website is hopebound.com. They're also on Instagram at Hopebound Mental Health. And you can reach out to Christina personally as well, and the many other ways that they're making an impact in our local communities, specifically serving this very important demographic of the youth and the adolescents, and making sure that they have this resource available in addressing mental health. So I want to thank you again, Christina, for coming on and making the time to speak on this wonderful venture that you have going on through Hopebound. And I hope to share this with as many people as I can, and that they're going to get the right help by connecting with you as well.
Thanks so much, Daniel. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much again for having me on.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Let's do it again soon.
Sounds good.